From Los Angeles, I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Doug Stolhand. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Puck Podcast. It is Sunday, June 8th, 2025. This is our first period of a three-period podcast. The first period, which some of you are watching on YouTube, will recap the first two games of the Stanley Cup Final. Also, we'll comment on the latest news around the NHL this week, including a surprising firing in Dallas. Our second period is our interviewer special feature segment, and Doug will chat with Joey Erickson, the host of Locked On Dallas Stars podcast, and talk about their big coaching news this week. And in our third period, it's our fan feedback segment where we read listener emails. We'll also have our off-ice report talking about what's going on in our lives and more. You can find all three periods on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you're seeing, you can also subscribe, like, and get notified when our latest shows are out.
Eddie and I have been doing this podcast for 19 years now and have been members of the NHL media for a combined 50 plus years. We cover all 32 teams equally every single week. So if it's a big story in one city, it is a big story to us. But we always start with the big story of the week. And that is, of course, the Stanley Cup Final, which is going on right now. 2 games down, hopefully 5 to go for us that don't have a rooting interest in the outcome. But let's kick things off with my good friend and co-host, Eddie Garcia.
Thank you, Doug. And of course, we will start with the opening game of the Stanley Cup playoffs in Edmonton. You had the third place team in the Pacific, the Oilers, taking on the third place team out of the Atlantic and the defending Stanley Cup champs in the Florida Panthers. Of course, a rematch of last year's final, won in 7 games by the Panthers. So game 1, and the home team would strike first and quickly with Leon Draisaitl scoring his 8th of the postseason, just a minute, 6 seconds into the opening period. Panthers, however, would respond with a pair of goals. Sam Bennett would deflect a shot off of something, his foot, his stick, I don't know what, from Carter Verhaeghe. He did make contact with goalie Stuart Skinner in the process, but that would tie it up at 1-1. However, Edmonton Oilers head coach Chris Knobloch decided to challenge for goalie interference. It was ruled and explained on the ice that the contact was because of an Oilers player making contact with Bennett, and it was ruled a good goal. Bennett's 11th of the postseason, which leads all players. And because that was a failed challenge, Florida would get a resulting power play, which they would convert on, Brad Marchand scoring to make it 2-1 Panthers after 1 period.
I don't know about the challenge. I guess you take the chance, but kind of the same approach, if I was a head coach, the same approach I would take that you and I have taken for instant replay over the years is it has to be obvious to overturn it. You have to be able to look at it immediately and say, come on, that's a wrong call. And if you have to get into the interpretation or the minutia, I'm not challenging. It's not worth the power play, especially in the Stanley Cup Final. If it's a November game, then I might take that risk in a regular season game. But in a Stanley Cup Final game where it's the first period, this is not a crucial moment where it's like we have nothing to lose. We may as well try it because that was the game-winning goal with only a minute to play. No, I'll take my chances. And it was not an obvious goaltender interference. I get that every team that plays against Sam Bennett thinks that bastard interfered with our goalie, and that's his job. That's why he's so effective. That's why he's going to get paid this summer. But I would not have challenged that, and it resulting in a power play that resulted in a power play goal, and you go into the intermission down 2-1, I would think if I'm Chris Knobloch, I go into the locker room and say, that's on me. I shouldn't have challenged, but I thought I explained why I did. And then I go in and I yell at my video review guy that told me to challenge in the first place. And I tell him to get the hell out of there because I'll handle it from here. But as we've talked about, the coaches have the monitors on the bench. They can see this. They're not just taking blind faith. So he looks at it with his assistant coaches. Yeah, he gets advice from his assistants and his video review coach, but it's ultimately his decision. I wouldn't have challenged. I thought it was the wrong idea to challenge, but it was not a devastating thing. But when they did score and they were up 2-1, I thought, well, that team now has to bail him out because he is to blame for that second goal, in my opinion.
Well, you and I saw this completely on the same page. And as a fan of a team that was burned by a coaching challenge in these playoffs, I completely agree 100% with your philosophy on it. I'm not challenging any of these calls unless I am 100% sure that I believe it was goalie interference. Now, you still might not get the call because there have been times this year I've watched hockey and I'm like, that's goalie interference or that's not goalie interference, and it's gone the other way. But If I'm making the final say on it, I have to be in my mind and my heart 100% sure I'm at least in my mind making the right decision. If it doesn't go my way, it doesn't. But I have to live with the fact that, that I'm making this decision that could be crucial in the outcome of the game. So I've got to be 100%. I find it difficult to believe he was 100% sure on that. I didn't think it was goalie interference, period, to begin with, because of the contact that came with the skate of, I think it was Brent Kulak. But we're both on the same page. I would not have challenged, and I think that was certainly a questionable decision by Chris Knobloch.
The old definition from the Supreme Court of pornography is I can't tell you what it is, but I know it when I see it. And that's how I look at goalie interference at this point. Obviously, we can't write down and define what it is because by the letter of the law, as you said, we've seen examples that violate the letter of the law and are allowed to be good goals. And we've seen the opposite that don't seem to violate the law and get waved off. So it's kind of I have to look at that and say like, yes, that is something that needs to be challenged 100%, but it's very tough to determine what the officials are going to see both on ice and in Toronto, the league office. And then the other part is you only have so many challenges. They're not unlimited. And I want to keep that in my pocket. Should there be an offside, should there be something that is obvious and I know will get overturned, because if I burn it now, I'm done. Yep. And now we've got 2.5 periods to go, and I have no weapon left in my disposal to challenge a goal should it happen.
I think I know what I would like it to be as far as the definition of goalie interference. I would like it to be, was the goalie impacted from playing his position? And then, of course, if there's contact with an opposing player that causes contact to me, then that also, I'm waving that off. If you push him in, bump him in, cause him to go off balance and fall into, then that's part of the game. But as I said, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But this time, I think we both agree, at least on this one. We'll see.
I forget the player, but it was in these playoffs that we saw somebody driving the net get tripped by a defenseman at the last second. They go barreling into the goalie, and then the puck went in after that, and they were like, no goal. He took out the goalie. What the hell was he supposed to do? So even when you say, was the contact initiated by the defense, even that gets misinterpreted because, well, he didn't push him in. Nobody tripped him, and the guy had nowhere to go but into the goalie. Physics exists. You got momentum going one direction, and you're on your ass. You can't change momentum or direction. Anyway, it's an imperfect thing, but that one in particular, I could see them overturning it. I wouldn't have been, falling off my couch if they had overturned the call. But at the same time, I didn't think it was anywhere near obvious enough to risk the challenge.
All right, on to the second period where Sam Bennett would score his second goal of the game, 12th of the playoffs to make it 3-1. But that 2-goal advantage would be short-lived as the Oilers would come right back on a Victor Arvidsson goal from some distance, and we were 3-2 after 2.
That Arvidsson goal was, in retrospect, when you look back, the biggest goal of the game, in my opinion, because 3-1 going into the third period would be very difficult to overcome. The Panthers are very good at playing with the lead. And we've certainly seen the Oilers come back in the third period of these playoffs. But that goal, especially as quickly after Sam Bennett made it 3-1, gave the building life again and gets it back to a 1-goal game. Now, on any given shift, you can tie the game potentially. And that, I think, changes the entire mindset of both teams. And I thought was a huge goal for Arvidsson.
So on to the third period, and Connor McDavid would pass the puck from behind the net to a crashing Evander Kane. Now, the puck would make it through Kane right to defenseman Mattias Ekholm, who scores his first playoff goal in just his second postseason game this year. And we were tied at 3-3 heading to overtime.
Two guys on that you just mentioned that were not healthy to start these playoffs, Evander Kane and Mattias Ekholm, play a big part. And Evander Kane doing his job of driving to the front of the net and creating traffic, creating chaos, draws defense, and that allows Mattias Ekholm. But a huge moment for him, obviously, and the Oilers fans going crazy. They've seen comebacks from this team throughout these playoffs, and the belief has to be strong at that point that we're going to win this game because here we go again. This team is a team of destiny, has got to be the feeling. And I'm sure even though it's tied going into overtime, the mentality is we're going to win this game because that's how these playoffs have gone, and that's how this roster, they have found a way to win repeatedly.
I was mildly amused at the praise for Connor McDavid, and not that he is not above making otherworldly plays, which we'll talk about in game 2, but I thought he was not passing it to Matthias Ekholm. And the people were trying, how could he have seen Ekholm up there? Well, I don't think he did. I think he was throwing it in front to Evander Kane, and it happened to go through him, and there was Ekholm sitting in the right place at the right time. But I thought that was not Connor McDavid doing something amazing. I thought it was just a little bit of luck for Connor McDavid, in my opinion.
Oh, there's no doubt. He was passing to Evander Kane. I mean, he's skating. I get that he sees maybe Matthias Ekholm in the background, but the force of the pass was not back to the point. It was to the guy in the slot crashing, and he's hoping for, maybe one of the defensemen, because there were 3 people around the Panthers defenseman around Evander Kane. Maybe one of them knocks it in accidentally. You're just throwing it in front because you're behind the net. You don't have a scoring angle at that point. It happened to go through all 3. Now Matthias Ekholm has a ton of time, and Bobrovsky, also expecting the shot from up close, has to reset quickly. So, look, it's a primary assist for the best player in the NHL, but I would be hard-pressed to believe that he went into that thinking, I hope this gets to Ekholm because he's got the better scoring chance.
So final seconds of overtime, Edmonton would get a power play after Florida's Tomas Nosek put the puck out of play for a delay of game penalty, and the Oilers would take advantage with the combination that is so lethal. Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, a one-timer into the back of the net, unstoppable for Sergei Bobrovsky. For Draisaitl, second of the game, 9th of the playoffs, 31 seconds left in the overtime, and Edmonton pulls out a 4-3 thrilling victory for them. The crowd goes wild. Great atmosphere there in Edmonton, as it was all game long, and obviously the home fans go home happy. In the win, Stuart Skinner allowed 3 goals on 32 shots. For Draisaitl, the 2 goals, including his NHL record 3rd overtime game this postseason. Connor McDavid and Kasperi Kapanen each had 2 assists in the loss. Sergei Bobrovsky allowed 4 goals on 46 shots. Sam Bennett, a 2-goal game. Carter Verhaeghe and Nate Schmidt had 2 assist games. Panthers had been 31-0 under head coach Paul Maurice when leading after 2 periods in the playoffs. That goes away. Edmonton now 7-1 on home ice this postseason.
I mean, the Oilers' dream postseason continues in this one because you get behind 3-1 to the Panthers, and as you mentioned, no team has come back under Paul Maurice and beaten them when you're trailing going into the 3rd period until now. I mean, there's a first time for everything, and this was it. That power play, though, once again, the referees are not going to call a damn thing. They didn't call a single penalty in the 3rd period, and they didn't call anything in overtime until they had to. You're forcing their hand. They cannot look the other way if you chuck the puck over the glass and into the crowd. So Tomas Nosek forced their hand. They had to call it. I'm sure they didn't want to. They want the players to decide it. There was 1 penalty after the 1st period. They called a lot of penalties in the 1st period. And then one penalty after the 1st period, and that was on Evan Rodriguez, high sticking, late in the 2nd period. So I always hate that personally. I get the idea of let's let the players decide. But when you decide, you cannot tell me that only 1 rule was violated the entire last 60 minutes of this game. I mean, you're deciding it as well when you let people get away with interference, with slashing, with holding, with hooking, with any kind of penalty. You're keeping players from creating scoring opportunities, and that affects it just as much as you calling a penalty and calling it tight. So I didn't like that, but when you do the delay of game, it's an automatic. So that was unfortunate for Nosek. I saw a clip that one of the Oilers was kind of laughing at him as he was heading to the penalty box, and that's not got to make you feel good that you can't do anything about it. And then sitting in there with some middle-aged guy in an NHL jacket holding the clipboard while your team loses in the Stanley Cup Final and the entire arena is going crazy, and then the skate of shame across the ice to go join your teammates and do the old Jimmy the goaltender. Sorry, guys. That's a tough one for Nosek. But the Oilers, man, like you said, that is blood in the water when they get a power play in overtime with those two players. And you mentioned a lot of the players that had points in this. Corey Perry had another assist on that play, and he's absolutely been amazing in these playoffs. I mean, he's got, I think, 7 or 8 goals. This is his 4th assist. He's on the top power play unit and is a disruptive force. Everything's working at this point for the Oilers, and it was hard to, that's a game that I think the Panthers leave thinking we should have won that game. And a lot of teams have left games against the Oilers thinking we should have won that game this year. And Edmonton, as you mentioned, 7-1 on home ice. They have home ice advantage in this round. And that was a great comeback win and has to give them confidence that no matter what happens in the first period, they're still in it.
And we talk about things being different from a year ago. Obviously, the Oilers did not have home ice advantage, and obviously they didn't win game 1 because they lost the first 3 and then had to rally to force the game 7. So obviously, if you're the Oilers, you're thinking this is a different year. This is our year. Things starting off on the right foot for them. All right, on to game number 2. And this time it will be the road team scoring first early in the opening period. Sam Bennett on the power play, just 2:07 into the game, his 13th of the season and his 12th road goal, which is a new NHL record for the postseason. He is the man who loves to aggravate not only the other team, but the other fans as well. Florida with a 1-0 series lead, but we were just getting started in a wild opening period. Evander Kane would tie it up with a goal off the post and in. Evan Bouchard would then score. His initial shot blocked. Then the rebound goes right back to him, and he scores on the second attempt, 2-1 Edmonton. Florida comes back with a beautiful tic-tac-toe passing play. Seth Jones finishing it off to make it 2-2. But Leon Draisaitl would score on the power play, his 10th of the playoffs, on a ridiculous move around a defender and pass from Connor McDavid to cap off a 5-goal opening period and give the Oilers a 3-2 lead. And you talked about penalties. There were 11 penalties called in the opening period, including goalie interference on Sam Bennett, which I thought was pretty close to what the same thing that happened in game 1. However, Bennett fell on top of Stuart Skinner. He was shaken up on the play, apparently. No arm went up from the officials. They all gathered together after the fact and then decided it was goalie interference. But what an opening period to game 2 where you saw so much.
Oh, it was and from both teams. You've got great offense. What you didn't see was good defense from either team. I thought there was a lot of, as you mentioned, the tic-tac-toe passing, a lot of standing around looking at passes from both teams. And defensively, they kind of seemed like a step slow, almost shell-shocked at giving up an opportunity. And by being hesitant, they gave up the opportunity. So I thought it was pad defense from both teams. I think both coaches could go into the locker room. Obviously, Chris Knobloch a little bit happier because he's up 3-2. But, hey, we got to tighten things up. And you gave up 14 shots to the Oilers in the first period. You can't have that pace. You can't give up we can't be on pace to give up 45 shots every night. So we got to tighten things up here if we're going to play with this team. And I don't know that either team, well, I guess the Oilers probably would not mind trading punches, trading scoring opportunities because they have the offensive firepower to do it. But we talked about in our preview the absence of Zach Hyman and what would that do for this team? How would they adjust? They've adjusted beautifully. The lines are flying just as they always have. They're getting offensive production, and the key has been getting goals from their defense. You mentioned Evan Bouchard. Obviously, Matthias Ekholm tied the game in the game 1. So they're getting goals from everybody and from both offense or from both forwards and defense. Florida at that point, I think, down 1-0 in the series, down 3-2 going into the intermission, has to be a little bit shell-shocked about taking penalties as well. The power play is clicking for Edmonton. They have
and even when they're 4-on-4, right? You don't want to give McDavid and Draisaitl that extra room and space.
No, 100%. So they got to be a little bit more cautious, and that changes the way you play the game. You can't go out there with the hey, just play it. We'll kill the penalty if you take it. I think that was a tough first period for Florida.
And thoughts on this goalie interference penalty that was called on Sam Bennett?
I mean, as you said, I didn't like the fact that no arm went up immediately. I don't like the fact that you have to discuss it and say, "What'd you think? What'd you think?" And then let's call a penalty, because you just saw it happen, and you've got two referees. They're staring at the puck. One of them is down low to be with the good angle of this. I thought it was reactionary to the contact, and as you said, the fallout. And Skinner appears to be shaken up. You know my stance on that. Anybody that's listened to this show for 19 years knows that I hate calling based on the outcome of the play rather than what you saw. And I thought this was based on the outcome of the play. Skinner appears to be shaken up. We better call a penalty. Well, was it a clean hit or just an accident that shook him up? Like you said, it was very similar. Sam Bennett does the same move every time. It's not like this is some out of nowhere. He wasn't crashing into him.
And it's
This is
hard
what
to
he does.
believe. It's hard to believe that didn't factor into it. For me, I'm not saying Sam Bennett is being treated unfairly necessarily because he got the call in game one.
So
But
you're
it's
saying
hard.
if that's Eetu Luosterainen, it's not.
Yeah, yes. I think it's hard to believe if that's someone else or I think it's hard to believe that because it was Sam Bennett that didn't play some factor into calling a penalty.
And the fact that they did not give him an interference penalty the game before, because it's
Correct.
the same officiating crew.
Yeah.
But once again, these same teams that play the same, same style, a lot of penalties in period one. Let's see if that would continue. Let's see if the whistles would continue as the game continues.
Well, you would also think that in between the first and second periods, the coaches were like, "Hey guys, let's ease up on," especially if you're Florida. Like I said, you don't want to be shorthanded to the Oilers. You don't even want to be 4-on-4 because of all the ice for McDavid and for Draisaitl. And that was the case. We did not see another 5-goal period in period two, but we did see another strong second period for the visiting team, just like in game number one. Florida defenseman Dmitry Kulikov would score on a shot from the point. It would deflect off of Oilers defenseman Evan Bouchard and into the net. We were tied at 3-3. Then a penalty on Carter Verhaeghe gave the Oilers a power play, but Brad Marchand scores a huge shorthanded goal. Beautiful pass from Anton Lundell up the ice to get it to him. And the Panthers lead 4-3 after 2 periods.
Yeah, this has to give you great confidence for if you're the Panthers, because we talked about the penalty kill woes, and they're getting it set up, but they get a little fancy on the wall, right? They decide to pass it back a couple times on their backhand, and the Panthers pounced. And when you've got the puck in the offensive zone, that's not the time to start trying to do backhand passes with your back to the player you're passing it to. And Marchand is a veteran. He knows when an opportunity is going to present itself. He flies the zone. Lundell kicks it out to him, and he's gone. And then a veteran player like that with a good opportunity took advantage of it. Huge momentum shift in this game, no doubt about it, because instead of potentially Edmonton going up 4-3 with another power play goal going into intermission, Florida is now up 4-3 going into intermission. And yes, they've lost the most recent game, but they're now 31-1 when going into the third period with a lead. So they still are very comfortable in that position. But obviously there was power play time left going into that. And it'll be interesting to see, or for the Panthers there was, but how Edmonton responded. Down once again. You knew they had confidence. Florida knew they just blew a lead to this same team in the third period the game before. So the situation was the same, but that shorthanded goal had to change the vibe of the penalty kill completely for Florida.
So we go to the third period, the Panthers holding on to that 1-goal lead. They would have that 1-goal lead late in the period. Edmonton would pull the goalie for the extra attacker, and with just 17.8 seconds left, Corey Perry would score his 8th of the playoffs to tie it up at 4-4. I don't even know how he got the shot off. Eetu Luosterainen was all over him. He still, not only does he get it off, he puts it into the back of the net. The building erupts, as you would understand. It's the latest game-tying goal in Stanley Cup Finals history. We would go overtime, and as an LA Kings fan, I cannot tell you the amount of PTSD I had watching that, knowing that the Oilers did the exact same thing against the Kings in game 4, where they allowed a goal in the final 30 seconds, tie it up, and then the Oilers go on to win it in overtime. A little bit different situation. The Panthers weren't quite in the same kind of defensive shell that the Kings went into, but in the final seconds, there were some icings. They were losing faceoffs in their own end, gave the Oilers a chance. And as you've said, and we've seen, the Oilers have a lot of confidence that they can come back and make special things happen. And that was certainly a very special moment for them and Corey Perry.
Yeah, well, after 14 penalties being called in the first two periods, there were none in the third period, and there would be none in overtimes. So the whistles had gone away. Corey Perry is ageless. Somehow the man is 40 years old and still getting this done. He kicked the puck back to the point for Jake Wallman to take the shot, and then circles right back into the high slot. And as you said, fights off a defender to not only retrieve the puck, but get the shot off and beat Sergei Bobrovsky. Amazing play by him. And Rogers Place, the Oilers arena, absolutely going crazy. And if you're a Panthers player or coach, the deja vu has got to be strong. The difference in the playoffs between the regular season is that there's a full intermission between regulation and overtime. So unlike a regular season game where you just take a quick TV timeout and then we come straight to overtime, you've got a full 18 minutes to go back and collect yourself, get the frustration out, collect yourself, and realize it's a tie game going into overtime. Next goal wins. We win this period. We get the next goal. We steal home ice advantage. It's an even series. It becomes best of 5, and 3 games are in our building. That's the opportunity ahead for Florida. And for Edmonton, you look at it like, we get the next goal. We put doubt in this team's mind that no lead is safe with us because we're going to score at some point. They can't beat us in overtime, and we have a 2-0 series lead. We have to win 2 of the next 5 games if we get the next goal. And I like our chances to do that with the way this offseason's gone. So a huge overtime. We always say the strongly suggested win. This was a strongly suggested win for Florida for mental reasons, I think. You're never in trouble until you lose on home ice. But if you blow 2 third-period leads and lose both games, I think that plays into your mindset going into game 3 for sure.
So for the second straight game, 2 straight games to open up the final, we go to overtime. The Oilers kept the play in the Florida end for the most part, but it was the Panthers that had the 2 best scoring chances. Brad Marchand had a great chance. Stuart Skinner made an initial save, and then a follow-up shot went off the post. Then Sam Reinhart had a clean breakaway all alone and missed the net completely. Skinner didn't even have to make a save on that one. So no scoring in the first overtime. We would go a second overtime. Anything, though, from the first OT you want to comment on, Doug?
Other than it was exceptional to watch. I've talked about how I miss the tension of the playoffs, the living and dying. And even though I don't care really who wins this series in any way, you could feel the tension on each zone entry and each shot opportunity of like holding your breath of, is this going to make it through? Is this going to get deflected? And then where did it go? Oh, there's a battle for the puck near the crease. My God, where is it? I can only imagine what Oilers and Panthers fans were feeling as they watched this, because it's the Stanley Cup final. It's a huge game, and both teams, I was very impressed that both teams were playing well, but Edmonton by far had the better legs, better opportunities, I thought. And as you said, had control of the puck the majority of the time. I thought that was not a good sign for Florida going into the second OT.
Well, in the second OT, Kasperi Kapanen had a great break-in scoring chance for Edmonton, but Sergei Bobrovsky made the save. And then later, we would see a same combination from earlier in the game. Anton Lundell setting up Brad Marchand for a breakaway. He would squeeze the puck through Stuart Skinner's 5-hole on a little backhand, and the Panthers pull out a 5-4 double overtime win. The series is even at 1-1. It's 6th time in Stanley Cup Finals history the first 2 games decided in overtime. Florida now 8-3 on the road this postseason. In the win, Sergei Bobrovsky 4 goals allowed on 46 shots. Brad Marchand with a 2-goal game, including his 10th career goal in the Stanley Cup Finals, 9th and 10th career goals. Anton Lundell had the 2 assists, both on the Marchand goals. Seth Jones a goal and an assist. Nate Schmidt had 2 assists. In the loss for Edmonton, Stuart Skinner allowed 5 goals on 42 shots. Connor McDavid had a 3-assist game, giving him 31 points this postseason. It leads all players. Evan Bouchard a goal and 2 assists. He had 8 shots on goal in this game from the blue line. And Leon Draisaitl a goal and an assist. But Man, I don't know that the NHL could have enjoyed two better games to start this. Obviously, if you don't have a rooting interest and if you're the league, you want it to go on as long as possible. Now we've got the split, a game each for both teams. It's been a wonderful start to the Stanley Cup playoffs, finals. Wonderful.
100%. I mean, absolutely thrilling action, great goals. You mentioned Connor McDavid. He has 31 points in 18 games. The Ducks' leading scorer had 55 points this season. So, I mean, it's just shows you the difference between Connor McDavid and some of the teams that didn't even make the playoffs this season. My God, that he's within shouting distance of being, well, he's already a top 10 goal scorer for the entire Ducks season. But this Brad Marchand goal, man, Evan Bouchard was obviously gassed because he was standing next to him when he decided to fly the zone and he could not catch up to him. Leon Draisaitl did a great job of back checking. And again, kind of like we talked about with Corey Perry fighting off Eetu Luostarinen, Brad Marchand protected the puck as a veteran player will do, protected the puck and knew he had somebody coming from his backside right. He protected the puck. Draisaitl tried to tie up his stick, tried to tie up his hands. He still got the shot off and it trickles through 5-hole to win it. And hats off and congratulations to the one Florida Panther fan that was down in the corner of that puck or that zone because he jumped to his feet. And it wasn't two people. It was one person jumping up and down in a Panthers jersey while the rest of the arena is sat on their hands. Can't believe what they've just seen. But man, Brad Marchand is going to get absolutely paid this season because of exactly that. You look at a guy that is a free agent. He's 37 right now, but he's obviously still able to get the job done. And when games matter, he comes through. And that's more than there's kind of stages in building your team. First stage is to build them to make the playoffs. Second stage is to build them to win in the playoffs. And third stage is to get them to win deep in the playoffs. And he is a guy that fits all three categories. Sam Bennett is a guy that fits the second two. He's going to help you win in the playoffs and go deep on deep runs. He's not a guy that's going to drive the bus in the regular season. But once you get in the playoffs, he's your most important player. Zach Hyman kind of fits that description as well. But Brad Marchand, even at 37, is still a guy that on a good team can help you win in the regular season and can sure as hell help you win in the playoffs. Humongous game from him. And whatever they gave up to get him in the trade is worth it because
I think it turned out to be a first-round pick. I think it turned out to be a first-round pick.
Great. That's 100%. You know, that's exactly what you're hoping for when you give up a first-round pick to make a trade deadline move. Now, it could have blown up in their face. They could have lost in the first round to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then you say, why'd we give up a first-round pick for a rental like that? But now you get that win, home ice advantage secured for the Panthers, tied series, as I said. Now it is a best-of-5 series. Both games have gone to overtime. Both games have been outstanding. Either team could have won either game. So both teams have to feel like they stole one and they let one get away. And now we've got 5 games left to determine who will be the champion this year. But with Florida coming home after that win, Bobrovsky played great in overtime. Fantastic. So again, when you need somebody to make a save, and that's what we always talk about, the difference in goaltending. If you need somebody to make that big save, Bobrovsky did it. And Skinner didn't. That's a save. You know, I get Marchand's on a breakaway, but that puck can't beat you 5-hole. You know, if he beats you clean with a great move and he goes up top shelf or something, that's one thing. But 5-hole, that's a tough one to get beat. And it barely trickled through, but that's all it takes to count. Great games, though. Obviously, great games. As people I don't care who wins, I was extremely entertained. I can only imagine the excitement and the heartbreak for both sides in each game, vice versa for one to the other. But man almighty, a couple of great games, and we all are hoping we see 5 more of those.
No doubt. And I will admit, I do have a rooting interest. I am very much rooting against the Edmonton Oilers. And I felt, I watched it in a second overtime and I'm stressed out. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? My team's not playing. Why am I stressed out? But when Marchand scored, I jumped off my couch and I had a few choice words to say. And I enjoy and I saw that Panthers fan in the corner you were talking about. Did you see Brad Marchand's mom? That was making the rounds on social media. She was there and she was up. And we know where Brad got his chirping skills from, because she was up and she was having a few words to say. And I think it was her husband was trying to hug her and maybe also quiet her down a little bit as well. But that was fun. That was very, very fun to see. But I mean, again, the first two games have been amazing. We've had 9 periods played so far. 16 goals have been scored. There's been 4 lead changes, 6 game tying goals, 4 game tying goals in game 2. Florida had a 2-goal lead for a minute 17. And that's the only time so far in the series where the games haven't been tied or it's been a 1-goal margin. So tight hockey throughout these first 2 games has really been the calling card. And like you said, it's been so fun to watch.
Yeah. And I saw something about Corey Perry has been like in 4 of the last 5 Stanley Cup Finals or something like that, 5 of the last 6. It's crazy that he continues to produce at this level and reach the Stanley Cup Finals. He has not won any of them, though. So, seeing the veteran players like that come through in big moments. Corey Perry ties it. Brad Marchand wins it. It just reminds you that, you get these guys, you're like, oh, we talk about it. We're going to talk about it all summer with free agency. I don't know that you want to sign that guy because he's going to be 37, 38 when that contract ends, and that's not worth it. These guys are still coming up big in moments, and Sergei Bobrovsky's no youngster either. So it does matter when you get to these games. Experience matters, calm matters. They've been here before, and they still get the job done.
Well, we've got 3 games coming up between now and our next show, Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. I will be very surprised if the finals are resolved by then, but we shall see. 3 more games Monday, we know for Thursday? Sure. Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. Yes.
So there's only 1 day off for travel between game 4 and 5, but 2 days off in between. That's
I'm guessing NBA Finals has something to do with it. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. That's a weird schedule.
Well, we've enjoyed, and I'm sure you have too, the start of the Stanley Cup Final. We had some big news to discuss.
Hold on. Did you say you'd be surprised if it was wrapped up by the time we do the show next week?
Yes, I would be.
Yes, yeah. Meaning some team's going to win the next 3. That would be surprising. Yeah. Right. But I think the biggest game, honestly, Monday's game they're all big, of course, but game 4 will be the deciding game of the series, kind of to me, because whoever wins game 3 has a chance to take a 3-1 series lead. And obviously that's not the clinching it, but having 3 opportunities left to close it out is a great opportunity. Whereas if it's tied at game 4, after game 4, going back to Edmonton for game 5, Edmonton reclaims home ice advantage. They have a chance to take a 3-2 series lead. It's just that game 4 is going to be massive on Thursday.
Looking forward to it. Let's move on to the news of the week in the NHL. Lots of coaching news, including I've got to say I was surprised by this, even though in some ways I understand it. But the Dallas Stars fired head coach Pete DeBoer. 3 seasons in Dallas. The team made it to the Western Conference Finals each time. Of course, they lost each time. A record of 149, 68, and 29. As head coach of the Stars, 29-27 in the playoffs. This is a guy who has been very successful pretty much everywhere he's gone. He's taken 2 different teams to the Stanley Cup Finals, the Devils and the Sharks. He's taken 4 different teams to the conference finals, 8 trips to the conference finals for Pete DeBoer, Stars, Sharks, Golden Knights, and Devils. At the time of his firing, he was the 4th winningest active coach in the NHL. Now, there's a couple of guys who've been fired since the season started that would be ahead of him if they got another job, like Peter Laviolette and John Tortorella. But he's also a guy who doesn't stay too long, maybe wears out his welcome wherever he's gone. 3 seasons in Florida, 4 in New Jersey, 5 in San Jose, 3 in Vegas, and now 3 in Dallas. There's no question he's a successful winning coach. And I have no doubt he's going to get another job, maybe very soon, relatively soon in the NHL. I was both surprised and not surprised, I guess, to see this news this week.
Well, I was definitely surprised, and we'll get into it with Joey Erickson in the second period to get all the details on why this happened, what indications there were leading into it, and where the Stars go from here. But as a fan on the outside looking in, I was very surprised because, yeah, we know there were tensions between the way the season ended between him and Jake Ottinger. And that's just what we saw publicly. We have no idea what was going on behind the scenes. But he got you to the conference final 3 straight seasons. He's got a winning percentage of .665 in the regular season. What the hell do you want? I mean, my God. So it would have to be irreconcilable differences going on between these to where the players in the exit interview said, I don't want to play for this MFer anymore. This rectum has to go. And then you'd be like, but we just got to the conference final. You're telling me if we beat Edmonton, he's still going to get fired if we go to the Stanley Cup final? I mean, he was so hated by the players that they beat the Avalanche, that they beat the Golden Knights. I find that hard to believe. So did everything just fall apart in the conference final? Again, we'll talk Joey Eriksson, and he's got some interesting insights as a guy that follows the Stars on a daily basis and pays attention to all the comings and goings from that team. But this was surprising. Not only has he been to the conference final the last 3 years for Dallas, in his last 7 seasons as a head coach, he's been to the conference finals in 6 of them. This is a guy that wins. And yes, he burns himself out very quickly. Obviously, 3 years with the Vegas, they tell him to hit road. The next year they win the Stanley Cup. 3 years in Dallas, they've told him to hit road. We will see where he lands. He has been a head coach in the NHL every season since 2008. He has not been unemployed since 2008. We've been doing the show longer than that, but not many other things in the NHL have a longer tenure, active tenure than Pete DeBoer behind an NHL bench. And he will be a coach next season. Make no doubt about that. Even if he doesn't get hired this summer, the first team that fires their coach will be calling Pete DeBoer and saying, how'd you like to take over our team mid-season? And Peter Laviolette potentially as well if he is not hired by Dallas. But I was surprised by this. There had to be a lot of tensions behind the scenes, and I'll be very interested to see who they hire to replace him. I do think we're going to talk about a couple teams that hired hired their head coaches this past week before the DeBoer hiring. I do think this changes the math for a lot of teams that thought their coaching situation was settled because they couldn't have anticipated Pete DeBoer being available. And now he is. And I look at your LA Kings. Yep. Yeah, we said Jim Hiller is our head coach. But this guy can get us to the conference final, almost guaranteed, because that's what he does. 6 of the last 7 years, he's been a coach in the conference final. He's a better head coach than Jim Hiller. There's no doubt about that. And if you have an opportunity to upgrade your team in any position, whether it's behind the bench or on the roster, you have to do it. There can be no sentiment. There can be no, well, we already said this. And I honestly, if I'm the Bruins or the Penguins, I might be looking at this now, maybe not the Bruins, but if I'm the Penguins, I might be looking at it and saying, I know we just hired you, but things have changed in 48 hours. It would be embarrassing for the organization, but I think you get past that when you have a chance to get a head coach that has had this much success and is this successful at getting teams not only into the playoffs, but deep into the playoffs. He has not won a Stanley Cup, but he's been to 2 Stanley Cup finals, and he's been to the conference finals repeatedly. So it's a guy that knows how to win in the regular season and in the playoffs. And those coaches are not readily available too often. So if you go into next season and you have any kind of playoff or cup aspirations as a team, if there's any struggle out of the gate, you got to move fast because somebody's going to get Pete DeBoer by American Thanksgiving, in my opinion. And the first team that decides this isn't working, let's go Pete DeBoer. I mean, I'd almost be running ads with the money Dallas is paying me of need a head coach, call DeBoer. I'm available, like get me in there because this is a guy that knows how to win. But Dallas decides this isn't our head coach anymore. And that is surprising only in the sense that they were so good, so successful every single year and seem to be right on the cusp. We talked about it last week with Rod Brindamore. At what point is he on the hot seat? I don't think he is, but after this, I can't say he's safe either, because obviously just getting to the conference final is not good enough for some teams, and they're looking for that piece that could get them over the hump.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different with Brendan Moore because of his history with that organization, but you're right. And I say I was and wasn't surprised. I mean, ultimately, I am surprised. When my initial reaction when I saw the tweet that DeBoer was out was whoa. But then I mean, Pete DeBoer, like we've said, he's a guy that does wear out his welcome relatively quickly. So in that respect, I was like, yeah, okay, I guess it's Pete DeBoer. But look, I'd take him as the head coach of my LA Kings right now, if I could. And we saw this last season with the St. Louis Blues when Jim Montgomery became available, and they said, "Hey, he's better than our guy. We're hiring him." So I agree. I can't imagine anyone would do it before the season started. But if your team gets off to a bad start and there were any expectations at all, or even maybe not, I could see Pete DeBoer or Peter Laviolette getting a job pretty quickly next season.
Well, the difference for the Blues was that they didn't just hire that guy, right? Like
Yeah, but I think he was only in like his second year. It wasn't.
No, but I'm saying that for the teams that made coaching changes this offseason, the Ducks, the Kraken, the Blackhawks, the Bruins, the Penguins, etc., those teams aren't going to most likely. It would be embarrassing as an organization to fire the guy you just hired.
Correct.
Even though there's a better option available potentially. But for teams like your Kings or like other organizations that said, we're sticking with the head coach we have, I do think this changes the math for them. But it would also be embarrassing for that organization to say, well, I know we said X, but things changed and we have an opportunity to do this now. So I don't think they're going to do it now, but I don't think they have a long road if they are interested in Pete DeBoer. And if Peter Laviolette does not get the job in Dallas, then that's two head coaches that have had a lot of success. Laviolette having won a Stanley Cup and Pete DeBoer getting to 2 Stanley Cup Finals that are available at a moment's notice, that are waiting in the wings to come in and take over a franchise that is struggling. So it'll be very interesting. I wonder if Pete DeBoer might have been a better fit in New York with the Rangers. You get rid of Laviolette. Let's bring in a guy that has had success. He's going to burn out quick, but we'll take it with this veteran core that we think is ready to win a Stanley Cup. Get us to that conference final, give us a chance, and let's see what we can do. But it was fascinating what happened in Dallas.
And looking forward to listening to your interview with Joey Erickson in the second period of the podcast. We also had 2 hires this week, so all of the NHL coaching vacancies have now been filled. Marco Sturm is the new head coach of the Boston Bruins. Probably remember him if you're a NHL fan of any time. 938 NHL games played. 5 of his 15 seasons were in Boston with the Bruins from 2005 to 2010, so they're familiar with him there. Got his coaching career started in his native Germany, both professionally and internationally. Then became an assistant coach for my LA Kings. Then was hired as the head coach of their AHL affiliate, the Ontario Reign. 3 seasons there. His teams made the playoffs each season. So Marco Sturm, former NHL player, 46 years old, now getting his first shot as an NHL head coach.
Yeah, it's interesting that he got this job. He's the 6th European-born NHL head coach in history, and they haven't had a great track record. The European head coaches. But I think he's a little bit different in the sense that he has been in the NHL and AHL for a long time now. He's not coming from Europe as many of them did. So I think it's a little bit different there. I know he was a guy that some Kings fans were hoping would take over in LA as a promotion. I know he was considered by other teams as well. So this is a guy that's been sought after for a couple of years now as a head coaching candidate. And I'm excited for him that he gets this opportunity to be an NHL head coach. He is a guy that I think will bring both the coaching experience from a variety of different positions, as you mentioned, Europe, the AHL, and the NHL, but also the player experience in the NHL and having that firsthand experience. It's not necessary to be a good NHL head coach, to be a former player. Obviously, Paul Maurice and Pete DeBoer Neither of them had illustrious hockey careers, but both of them are very good coaches. But I do think it helps to identify with the players and kind of come from that. I've been there, done that. I'm not asking you to do anything that I haven't done myself kind of perspective. So I like this hire for them. I don't think I personally look at the Bruins as a team that is still in denial of where they are in their competition window. I think that they are entering a tough stretch, but they still think of themselves as just needing some tweaks here and there, and they're right back to being a cup contender. I don't think that's the case, but we'll see what they can do this summer. And Marco Sturm, I think, will definitely bring a different perspective and energy behind the bench that has been potentially missing in recent years.
Yeah, I certainly know a bit more about him, having been an LA Kings assistant and their AHL head coach. I've heard for quite a while that, he was being groomed to be the head coach of the LA Kings. And I think that's part of the reason why he went from being an assistant to the head coach of the AHL team. He wanted to get that head coaching experience for when he got his opportunity at the NHL level. It didn't work out for the LA Kings, which is kind of interesting because the guy who is the coach now, isn't the most experienced NHL head coach either. But yeah, it just didn't, the timing was never right, I guess, with the LA Kings. So now he gets his chance with Boston. You go from Marco Sturm to a guy that I've never heard of before, who is now the new head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and his name is Dan Muse. Now, I don't claim to know every assistant coach around the NHL, but again, I'd never heard of him before. I had to look and see who is this guy. And he comes from being an assistant with the New York Rangers, also an assistant before that with the Nashville Predators. But unlike Marco Sturm, this is a guy who did not play 1 second of professional hockey. He played college hockey at some place called Stonehill College in northeastern Massachusetts. The Skyhawks is, I had to look it up because I'm weird about nicknames like that. But so he does have NHL experience as an assistant. He was in the college ranks as well as an assistant and head coach at Yale. And they won the NCAA title in 2013. Also a head coach in the USHL for a while and won a championship there as well with the Chicago Steel. So a guy who's taken a different route to being an NHL head coach, but Dan Muse, now the head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, and he's apparently a guy that ran the Predators penalty kill unit, which is attributed to great success while he was there. So I guess the hope is that he will help this team defensively bring in. But look, Kyle Dubas did his due diligence and talked to a lot of different candidates. And when you do that, it's hard to criticize who he decides to pick. He talked to a lot of different people, and he said that this is the guy that was the best fit for his team at this time. So while you and I are certainly not familiar with him, we are also not fans of the Rangers or Predators. Certainly, if we were, we would be much more familiar with him as an assistant coach, as a familiar face behind the bench. But he's a guy that has a lot of coaching experience and is ready for that opportunity. We can't talk out both sides of our mouths and say we hate the old boys network of recycling head coaches and then criticize when they hire somebody new. This is giving a guy that is put in the work as an assistant coach to earn his opportunity. We will see what he can do. Pittsburgh is much like Boston. I think Pittsburgh's one of the worst coaching jobs in the NHL right now because of where they are in their talent age window. They have a lot of veterans on contracts that can't be moved, and they are not making the playoffs as is, and them getting older without a lot of young talent to come in from the prospects of drafting and their development. I think they're in a bad spot in a tough conference. So I think it's a tough job of all the teams. That's the one I would want the least as a head coach. But if you get offered an opportunity to be an NHL head coach and you're told you're going to have Sidney Crosby on your team and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang, I don't see how you turn that down. So I don't know enough about him to have an opinion of this is going to be a great fit, this is going to be a bad fit, but it's an opportunity for him as a younger coach, 42 years old, to prove that he has what it takes to be a head coach in the NHL. And certainly if he can make Pittsburgh a playoff team again and get them back into any kind of contention, that'll speak well to his ability to be a head coach, to coach in the NHL and get the most out of a roster that other coaches have not gotten the most out of. So it's an opportunity for him. And for Pittsburgh, you got to try something, but I like I said, I can't tell you enough, or I don't have enough information to tell you who would have been a better fit, nor why he might not be a good fit. I want to see what he does behind the bench before I make that decision. But it is an intriguing hire for Pittsburgh for sure.
We had some NHL awards handed out this week. Nikita Kucherov wins the Ted Lindsay Award as the MVP of the league, as voted on by the players, as he beat out Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar. Be interesting to see if he can follow it up with the Hart Trophy win. And he's the only he's the only player of the group of players that were nominated for the Lindsay and the Hart that was nominated for both. So Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar, who were the two other finalists for the Ted Lindsay, are not finalists for the Hart. That would be Connor Hellebuck and Leon Draisaitl. So I don't know if that gives Kucherov a leg up in any way, but he was voted on by his peers as the most valuable player of the league this year.
As we've talked about, as a player, this is the one that would mean the most to me. What do the players consider to be the best player in the NHL? And they have voted, and they voted me. Now, what does the media consider? That's an honor. I'm very happy to win the Hart if they give it to me. But if I could win one of the two, this is the one I would want to win. It would mean more to me to be voted on by my peers. And the players are going to know best because they play against this guy. Obviously, the Eastern Conference teams play against him all the time. Western Conference teams still play against him twice a year. So everybody knows what Nikita Kucherov can do on the ice. And if they say he's the best player, who are we to argue? And I don't think it's going to influence his Hart Trophy. Obviously, two completely different voting bases, and those votes are already cast. But it will speak to, it already does, the finalists, right? Like you said, the three finalists for the Ted Lindsay, only one of them is a finalist for the Hart. So it speaks to the players did not think Connor Hellebuck was the best player in the league, nor Leon Draisaitl. They thought it was MacKinnon and Makar. Was that the other two?
Yes.
Yeah. So two Avalanche and a Lightning. My goodness. And both teams bounced in the first round. Hard to believe.
And of course, Kucherov did win the scoring title this year, so there's that for him. The Jack Adams Award handed out, so apologies to the winner who will be fired in the next couple of years, because that's always seems like that's always the case. Say that in jest, sort of. Spencer Carberry of the Washington Capitals was named Coach of the Year, beating out Scott Arniel of Winnipeg and Martin St. Louis of Montreal.
Why do you think he gets it over Scott Arniel? Why would the team that had the best regular season and does not have the greatest goal scorer of all time on their roster get that?
I would guess expectations going into it. I think we all thought, well, I don't know. Nobody thought Winnipeg was probably going to have the President's Trophy, but I don't know that any of us thought that Washington was going to be the second best team in the NHL as they were as far as points go. So that would be my guess, is that maybe the expectations were a bit lower for Washington than they were for Winnipeg.
Fair enough. But like you said, it has not been an award that has been a harbinger of good things to come in the future. It is usually the shadow over the doorstep of this is not a good thing. And you should be looking to sell your house in the next 12 months.
Alexander Barkov wins the Selke Trophy as the league's top defensive forward and the King Clancy Award for community service. As far as the Selke goes, he beat out his teammate Sam Reinhart and Anthony Cirelli of Tampa Bay.
I mean, that speaks volumes right there, right? That two guys on the same team are Selke candidates as best defensive forwards, and then you have a good defense, and then you have a good goalie. That's why the Panthers are in their third straight Stanley Cup final and are the defending champions. So Barkov, but I love to see a guy that is a great player on the ice be a great person off the ice as well. So him winning the King Clancy shows that he's just a class act and one of those guys that is very tough to who hates Sasha Barkov, who around the league is like, oh, I hate that bastard. That's a guy that you have to respect on and off the ice.
Sean Monahan wins the Masterton Trophy for perseverance and dedication to hockey. And we were thinking that it was kind of a layup for Gabriel Landeskog, but that was not the case. And I did want to mention all these awards that were handed out were the NHL did a kind of a surprise video for all of them. Very nice touch that Meredith Gaudreau, the widow of Johnny Gaudreau, surprised Sean Monahan at his home with the trophy. And of course, the camera crew's there to record all of that. I really liked it. It kind of reminded me of the NFL Hall of Fame announcements where they have where they have a Hall of Famer go to the guy's house and say, "Hey, you're in the Hall of Fame."
Right.
I liked all these. I thought all these were well done, and the winners all seemed genuinely surprised. So that was pretty cool. And the Monahan thing obviously was pretit emotional. It was cool.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's why he won it, obviously, right? He's good friends with Johnny Gaudreau and the shock. And then also he had a big injury this season that he fought through to come back and play great in the second half of the season. So a lot of things to attribute to his success in winning this award. And I liked that as well. I always get a kick out of it because the mindset of me, obviously these are well produced and planned, right? They know the person's home. But when there's somebody knocking on the door to surprise them, I always want the player to be either drunk or, in the middle of a domestic dispute where he's yelling at his wife or something and just, they're having a terrible time. Like, what do you want? Oh, hey, man, we were just coming to tell you you're in the Hall of Fame. Oh, okay, great. Or just not home. They get the wrong house. No, this is vacation house. No, he's at the other house. But, I'd love to see the outtakes of these as the various things, but no, these are great to see and well done by the NHL. So as you said, but obviously the family's in on it because there were cameras inside the house reacting or getting his response as well. And, he's dressed nicely. His hair looks done, like I said, he's not disheveled. He's not 3 beers into a 6-pack. Sitting out in the backyard, So.
Apparently, Monahan's wife told him they were having family pictures taken. That's why he was dressed up. So
there you go. No, it's well done by the NHL, and these are fun to see for sure.
We had a few contracts handed out that we will mention real quick. And Doug, you can have any comment you want on them. But the Colorado Avalanche signing center Brock Nelson to a 3-year deal worth $22.5 million, $7.5 million AAV. Of course, he was a pickup at the trade deadline. Had spent long career with the New York Islanders. Didn't do too much in the playoffs against Dallas, but they saw enough of him that they wanted to keep him around for a little bit longer. So Brock Nelson staying with the Avalanche.
Yeah. When I saw the price, to me, if that was the Ducks, I would not have liked that. I don't think of Brock Nelson as a $7.5 million a year player, especially with what I saw with him with Colorado. And they don't have a lot of cap space. We think about this offseason being kind of lucrative, that a lot of teams have a lot of cap space to go out and spend, and there's a lot of good players to spend on. With this signing, the Avalanche now have $1.2 million in cap space. That's it. And there are other players to sign. They have defensemen to sign. They have forwards to sign. Any moves you make to actually upgrade your team other than just bringing the exact same roster back. So me personally, I would have said good luck in free agency if I was them. But that's not the direction they went. And Brock Nelson now there for 3 years. And they have on July 1st, they'll have the opportunity to re-sign Marty Necas, which I think is the big one because he has 1 year left on his deal and is a UFA when it expires. Much like they did with Mikko Rantanen. If they get the idea that they're not going to be able to retain Marty Necas, I could see him being traded this summer to create some cap space that they will need to then replace him both in the short term and long term. So that's one to keep an eye on as well.
This one a little bit interesting. Tampa Bay Lightning signed forward Yanni Gourde, 6 years, $14 million, $2.3 million average annual value. So not a lot of money spent per year, but a 6-year deal for a veteran depth forward.
And he gets a no trade clause, which, usually you have to take a little bit less money to get, but $2.3 million, as you said, I think it's better Like once they agreed on the price, how much do you want to be paid? Here's what I want to be paid. We're agreed. Can we add a couple years on the back end to lower our annual cap hit? Do you care? No. And if Yanni Gourde says, I'd like to retire at some point, then that's money out of his pocket, but he could also be put on LTIR if he gets injured later in his career. So he's 33 now, so he's 39 at the end of this contract. So I could see that being the case down the road, but I like the extension. It's not circumvention because he didn't sign him to a 15-year deal like we saw with Ilya Kovalchuk and Rick DiPietro, but it is a way to get him a lower cap hit year to year while still retaining the player for basically the rest of his career.
Philadelphia Flyers signed forward Noah Cates, 4-year contract, $16 million. He'll make $4 million per year. Vancouver Canucks signed defenseman Derek Forbort, 1 year, $2 million. And the Wild re-signed forward Marcus Johansson, 1 year, $800,000.
I mean, that's a bargain for Marcus Johansson. You get any player for under $1 million in 2025. That's a very good price. And if he gives you anything, it's found money.
Colorado Avalanche forward Logan O'Connor had hip surgery. He's going to be out 5 to 6 months, so he will miss the start of next season. Carolina Hurricanes forward Jesper Fast announcing his retirement after 703 career NHL games with the Rangers and Hurricanes. He was a 6th-round pick of the Rangers back in 2010. So sometimes those 6th-round picks, they work out.
Oh, absolutely. And you said he only played for 2 teams?
Only 2 teams, yep.
I thought he was a little bit more of a journeyman than that, didn't you?
A little bit, yeah. A little bit.
That's
maybe
surprising.
4, something like that.
Yeah.
And
maybe
finally,
I'm thinking more of Victor Faust.
Maybe it's another Fast you're thinking of.
Yeah, the old goalie, Victor Faust.
And Gary Bettman had his State of the League address ahead of Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. Not a lot there that was too exciting for me. He said the CBA talks are going well. That should be taken care of hopefully here in short order. He was asked about expansion. He said that they're listening. Of course they are. But one thing he said that I was a bit relieved to hear, he was asked, will the NHL be looking to expand the playoffs, and would there be any possibility of an in-season tournament? I know you don't follow the NBA, Doug, and neither do I anymore with my job that I used to have. But last season, the NBA did this in-season tournament to try and drum up some interest in the regular season, because nobody apparently cares about the NBA regular season until Christmas. So I guess I get what they're trying to do, but I was grateful to hear Gary Bettman say that the NHL has no interest in changing their playoff format in any way, or that they would go to some kind of in-season tournament, which I am not a fan of.
Yes, I do know of the NBA in-season tournament. I don't know about it enough to understand how it works or what it means. So I don't really care too much, but I was just kind of thinking as I heard about it, does it seed? Are there brackets? Does that mean it changes? Or is it just like, we're going to take these next 10 regular season games and the team with the best record wins? I don't understand it, but I don't care. Not my sport, not my circus, not my monkeys kind of thing. So the NHL, I would like to see, if anything, I would say, they're doing great. I mean, obviously the league is thriving. The salary cap is going up. The ratings are up. The sport looks healthier than ever since we've been covering it. So nothing to change there. But I would like to see, and I'm curious what you think, maybe a return to kind of what the baseball used to do. Western Conference teams only play Western Conference teams, and Eastern Conference teams only play Eastern Conference teams. So you don't play the entire league. You play 16 teams, and that way there are 2. I think over time it would develop 2 separate styles of playing, and then there would be more intrigue in the Stanley Cup Final because those two teams had not played each other that season, and maybe in many years, depending on their success. What do you think of that?
I'm not interested in that. I like seeing, in the past, I know they're not in their prime anymore, but I enjoyed seeing Alexander Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby and some of those stars make a trip out west, once a year. So I would feel disappointed if I didn't have that kind of an option to see players, from across the league that would come here to play once a year. So I'm not interested in that.
What about a rotation kind of like the NFL where the Central Division is going to play the Atlantic Division this year, and then next year they'll play the Metropolitan Division, and vice versa. They alternate. So you're not playing the entire Eastern Conference, but you're playing half of it.
No, I wouldn't be in on that either. Although it is weird. Some of the scheduling is weird where you don't play every team in your division the same amount, which I don't really understand.
Right.
Like
some teams you play 6, some teams you play 5.
Yeah, I'm not sure what goes into that. I guess it's so you can play every team twice at least.
Right.
But yeah, I thought that was that. I've always thought that was a little weird. So no,
yeah, I'd say the logistics, they don't do a good enough job of explaining just how difficult coming up with a schedule is, to make every arena work, to make every team schedule work, to not make teams fly from Florida to Vancouver overnight to try and play another game. It's an incredible logistical nightmare. And you have to work with so many, okay, this arena has concerts booked on this night, and they've got an NBA team, and they've got a convention, and they've got a rodeo, and they've got this. Okay, so here are the list of dates we have available. Now, if I put this here, oh, now this doesn't work. It's a nightmare. And I would love to see more behind the scenes. It would be a great thing for NHL Network to do in the offseason of just the entire process of building the NHL schedule, because we all complain about, I can't believe we got 13 back-to-backs. Well, look, man, this is what this is the reality of it, is that's the only time this arena was available. And you're in New York anyway, so you're going to play the Rangers and Islanders back-to-back. It's going to happen.
All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap up the first period? Did anything that I slipped through my fingers that I didn't mention that you want to mention from the past week?
I don't believe so. I recommend everybody watching on YouTube find the podcast version of the show to listen to the second period interview with Joey Erickson. Great insights into why the Dallas Stars made this coaching move and who might be their next head coach. Some insights from Jim Nill as well about their roster construction for next season. So good stuff coming up in the second period from Joey Erickson. And if you're listening, just keep doing what you're doing, and you're going to hear it in just a matter of minutes.
That is correct. That will do it for our first period on the YouTube channel. If you enjoyed what you saw and want to hear more, obviously we would encourage you to check out the remaining 2 periods of the podcast. Just search Puck Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast. If you're listening to the podcast, as Doug said, second and third periods coming right up. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Doug Stolhand, and we'll talk to you next time with another edition of the Puck Podcast.